The balance part of it is like being able to put players in that sweet spot between the game's challenge and the player's like mastery over what they're doing.
Congratulations on your publishing deal with
Thanks. Thank
Devolver.
you.
That is so cool. And
Thanks.
on the 100,000 wish list that you have.
Yeah, it's 100,
Ben,
125 now.
125.
Yeah.
It has been so cool following so much of the journey. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Quest Markers. On this show, we talk about video games and the people behind them. I'm Marina. I make music and sounds for games. And today, I am so excited to have Ben from Team Lazerbeam with us. Ben is currently working on a game called Shroom and Gloom, which is this wonderfully colorful first-person roguelike double deck builder. We'll be talking about all things indie development today and digging into what it means to make a game like Shroom and Gloom. And this episode, as always, will be timestamped with the topics that we cover. So feel free to jump around if you're watching the VOD. If you're here with us on Twitch, we do have emote-only chat for the duration of the recording, but we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. I'm very excited for today's conversation. And Ben, before we dive into your introduction, how are you staying hydrated?
I'm staying hydrated with a little blue sippy cup that matches my nails and has tiny dinosaurs on it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh yeah, I love that. Wait, I'm not really color coordinated today. Not really. I love it. I've got coffee as usual. I usually take soy milk
Nice.
with my coffee, but I have oat milk today. I'm not really feeling the oat milk, but that's okay. And then water. Dual wielding. As
Dual
always.
wielding.
Always.
Nice. Nice.
Ben, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Ben, one of the members of Team Lazerbeam, which is a small video game band from Cape Town, South Africa. We've been making games together since 2014, and our goal is pretty much to approach making video games in a way that's more like a band than a studio, and making games that make people really happy. Our previous MO was making like games that kind of deliver maximum impact in the shortest playtime possible. And we just did it for fun for a really long time. And then at some point we were like, oh, hey, what if we tried to actually support ourselves making games? And then we kind of took the plunge to try to do that. And now we're making Shroom and Gloom, which is our first game that's like a much longer, much bigger game. And also the first Team Lazerbeam game where you can kill things, even if they are just mushrooms.
That you can
And
then
yeah, what I
eat.
do that you can then eat, cook and eat mushrooms. Where like our previous games were all like very kind of like non-violent, no combat, no lose states. So yeah, that's quite a change for us. And what I do with Team Lazerbeam primarily is game design, art, and writing. Although there's not very much writing in Shroom and Gloom, so it's mostly art and game design, and then otherwise just try get everyone excited about what we're doing, which isn't hard because it's an exciting game. But that's my other big kind of role within the band, is just like make sure everyone's stoked and happy and having fun.
I love that. And I love that you call yourselves a band. We need to get you a tour bus. We were just talking about tour
Yeah, we need a
buses.
tour bus.
You need a tour bus.
Team Lazerbeam on the road, the live show.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
That would be
Okay,
pretty
we got to
cool.
make it happen. That would be sick. That would be really sick.
Tell us a bit about the concept behind Shroom and Gloom, to the extent that you can, because first-person
Mm,
roguelike double deck builder is a lot of things in one, and I think it really
mm,
works, having played the demo a few times
mm.
now.
Yeah, yeah. So that's it. First person roguelike double deck builder with sort of like a fungal punk theming. It's intentionally, well, I think like a big kind of cornerstone of it is it's like it's made by us being fans of roguelike deck builders. Um, but it's also kind of subverts a lot of things that have kind of become expected in the genre. Like there's no blocking. You can't ever play a block card. It's pretty much all offense and eating. So you basically have to suck up all of this damage and then like cook and eat a bunch of mushrooms to recover it, which is like quite unconventional, given that like Slay the Spire sort of set the template of like that balance between playing attack and defense cards.
Mhm.
We're just like, no, 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 it's way more fun, just like, just go at it, right? And then the other side of it is that the double deck building thing is that you're building a combat deck and you're also building an exploration deck. And so all of those phases in between combats are also card play. where traditionally games in the genre will kind of switch over to like, a world map and you're clicking around on the map or making choices between like text options, or there's other little mini games, whatever, but they're generally not focused on card play. For us, sort of one of our cornerstones, the design philosophy of Shroom and Gloom is like everything that can be a card should be a card. Um, yeah. And I think that the other thing probably that's quite distinctive about it is that like the vibe is like this interesting balancing act between being kind of like gloomy and creepy, but also being like quite cutesy and punk and playful. So it like sits in a pretty interesting space aesthetically and in terms of the mood
Mhm.
and stuff. Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk about the aesthetics because the aesthetics are so cool. And you've posted quite a few TikToks showing the game in engine, which is incredible
Mm.
because it's just like layers and layers and layers of art. But before we dig into that and before we dig into design, because I'm really, really curious to talk about that, tell us a little bit about your game development journey. This is certainly not your first game that you worked on.
No, yeah. So as Team Lazerbeam, I should know this number out of my head, but we've published self-published a lot of games because we had that approach of like really short, scrappy little games. And early on in the process of doing Team Laserbeam, we kind of had like a little bit of like a manifesto form that we kind of followed, which was kind of inspired by a talk that I did, or what was inspired by a talk I did called The Shape of Punk to Come, which is like lifted from a Refused album. Um, and this idea that kind of punk rock, in terms of being like a subversive art form in the 20th century, kind of like ran its course in the sense of like really being able to like shake things up or like challenge people.
Mm,
People can still do really beautiful, emotive, interesting things within, that purely musical space, but it's not ever going to be able to go back to something like the 60s where people are like terrified of seeing like the Beatles wearing suits or something and being like, oh my gosh, what is this? Like, this is like society's crumbling or something. And you have those moments over time with music, with rock and roll, even predating rock and roll, obviously, but of like art that really kind of challenges people and seems to push culture forward. And my thing, I was like, well, I think video games are the next forefront of that, right? Like an
mm.
interactive medium that rattles the cage like that and really like pushes things forward. And so yeah, that was kind of our manifesto with Shroom and Gloom. I mean, with Shape of Plunk to Come. And so we basically just like went at making games like as fast and cute, aggressively cute as we could, really kind of like challenging all of the sort of like violent, serious, intense games that we were seeing out there by just being like, you know, super cute, super sweet, really just feeling like we're trying to just give players like a huge hug and make them feel really good. And creating stuff with like a real sense of spontaneity as just like it's not perfect at all because we're not perfect. We're human beings. We're not robots. And like we were just looking around and seeing so many other games coming out that looked like they kind of were being made by robots, right? Like so super polished. There's no rough edges. There's no sense of like the fingerprints necessarily of the people that made them. And we just wanted to swim against that and just be like, well, if I'm making a game about dating pro wrestlers, I'm going to draw this wrestler once and then it's like, perfect, put it in the game. Like, don't second guess it. Don't like, do like 20 iterations and pick the best one. Just like draw some crappy looking thing that's like, cool, stick it in the game, ship it, get it out there. And that basically enabled us to put out a lot of stuff in a relatively short space of
Mm.
time. So I think we've probably done going on like 10 or so games. We've also made a lot of games for like events, things that you can kind of like only play, things that have like custom controllers. We built like a giant Tamagotchi, which is like runs on like super speed. So you see this like virtual pet go from like the egg to the grave in the space of 2 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Um, so that's something that you can't play online, but you could play it in person at an event and stuff. So yeah, we've been pretty prolific. And yeah, made a lot of games over time, but it was for many, many years like purely a labor of love. It was just like
Mm.
making games over evenings and weekends. Which I think that was obviously also one of the things that dictated like small and scrappy the games were, is like we just really didn't have much more time or energy um, to put into stuff, and that worked out just fine for us. But at some point, I personally was like really itching to make some longer, more substantial games and be able to like put all my time and energy into doing this and not be like
Mm,
doing other weird stuff to pay rent and then like making
mm.
video games until my eyes were bleeding. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question well.
It
It was a
does,
bit
yeah.
haphazard.
I
Okay,
love that.
okay,
I love that.
okay.
And I like the insight of the first thing that we draw for this one is the one that we're gonna ship, and that is like
Yeah,
the most authentic first draft that
yeah,
we have.
yeah.
Um, and I think about like my process for making music, and I typically start like with a complete skeleton. Like I would never ship a first draft of a song
Mm,
that I
mm,
work on. But to your
mm,
point, I like preserving the DNA of the first draft,
mm,
where it's like, well, this particular thing was in the first draft that I really want to
mm,
preserve when it gets released. So
mm,
I really, really like that
mm,
insight. Um,
mm,
Diving into development, I'm so excited to talk to you about design and specifically balancing for a game like this. Because as you mentioned, as we kind of go through the game, we've got two decks. We've got the exploration deck, which are things like, keys where we can unlock doors, or if you don't have a key, you can bash a door in exchange for some health, or a tent to set up to sleep and recover some health. Or there's like a frog that really messed me up on one of my runs. So there's like kind of the exploration deck, and then there's also more of the combat deck where
yeah.
that's where, you kind of go and like essentially forage mushrooms and eat mushrooms, but they're attacking you during combat. So I'd love to talk to you about how do you think about design and balance, because that to me is the most, I think, intimidating part about building any sort of deck builder game is the
Mm,
player, um, and especially because it's a roguelike. So for each run, hopefully the player feels a sense of awe, or they're learning something, or they get a light bulb moment where they're like, ah, I know
mm,
this card, I have this, like I could use this
mm,
now in this way. So
mm.
tell us a little bit about specifically how you've been going about designing and balancing the game.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's a really interesting one. It's like when we were trying to even tackle doing this in a 7-day jam, 10-day jam, our friends were like, "You're crazy, don't do this. You can't build a card game. Make it first person," which at that point, that wasn't really a thing of like a first person card game where you're seeing the cards in your hand being played directly onto enemies and stuff. Um, make a card game, make it first person, and you create like an entire card game with not one but two decks of cards. Um, but yeah, our friends telling us we were crazy for it, I think actually spurred us on more than anything to just like do it and pull it off. And I should mention that like so much of the strong game design in Shroom and Gloom is directly from Evan Lazerbeam, who Evan and I had like jammed on little things in the past before, silly, goofy little things. But Evan is like a very accomplished game designer. He's just like my bandmate in Team Lazerbeam, but also very much like someone that I really, really admire. So I'm not necessarily the best person to comment on this because I'll jokingly be like, if we're not really big on titles with Team Lazerbeam, but if we have to like give ourselves titles, I'll be like, cool, well, Evan's in charge of good ideas and I'm in charge of bad ideas. And Evan will often just like entertain my bad ideas or figure out how to turn them into good ideas. But yeah, I can totally dig into things a little bit. So like one of the sort of starting points with things is this idea of just finding like one good interaction that you have between a card or an enemy or two cards together, the card and the player, the card in the world, um, and build outwards that way rather than thinking about like, oh, we're going to design this whole bunch of cards and imagine how they're going to play together and draft like 70 cards and be like, cool, this is the game now, let's implement it. Rather be like design one or two cards and then be like, does this feel fun? Does this like spark your imagination? Do you start seeing spaces where like
Mm,
maybe this is weaker and could be strengthened with something, or if something else were in place would create interesting combos. So for us with Shroom and Gloom, that was the first big moment like that was designing a card called Roast, which deals 4 damage to an enemy, and if it's fatal, that will make a toasty, which is a little edible. And there's just a simple little card. Was basically day one of the jam, just drawing some things, like literally putting ideas. My approach, at least with a lot of stuff, is also very much like visual and vibe first, which I guess is maybe a bit unconventional, and probably in older Team Lazerbeam games, kind of like some people would be like they're bad, you know. I love them and I think they're great, but it's like it's often coming from a place of like a visual idea or a
Mhm.
feeling or something, and then figuring out the mechanics to elicit that feeling or create that vibe. So roast is very much something that was like that was just like, okay, cool, drawing this little roasting this little mushroom, thinking about how the rules would work. It's like, oh hey, this is actually a compelling idea. And then once you have that and you get that implemented into the game as quickly as you can and start playing with it so that the development side of things is really going hand in hand with the design, and it's not like one leads the other, but rather that it's this kind of back and forth between the two. So yeah, then once you have something like roast in the game, then it's like, ooh, yeah, this is interesting. This is cool. What else can we do? Like, hey, what if you eat something and you get a toothpick? It's like, okay, cool. Table manners. Now you have table manners. Every time you eat, you create a toothpick, and a toothpick does like 2 damage. And it's like, okay, cool. Now we have these ways of dealing small bits of damage. What if there's a spell weakness that says every time an enemy gets damaged, they take additional damage? Cool, create spell weakness. So it's just kind of this like process of creating things. You obviously do land up creating a lot of things that you land up binning because it's like, oh, this is totally broken, or oh, this is super fun, but it will do something that like in certain contexts will completely ruin the game and make it not be fun anymore. Yeah, I don't think, can I keep going about this stuff?
Yeah, please, please.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I don't want to just like ramble
No, no.
just yap the whole time about this stuff. But like the balance question is an interesting one as well, right? Because it's like that comes up a lot when people are talking or thinking about these sorts of games. And it is in a lot of ways like a cornerstone of designing these kind of games, is thinking about balance. But it's also something that we're not that hung up on. Like what we want is fun. That's the primary thing, right? And so I just want to make a game that's like incredibly, incredibly fun to people. The balance part of it is like being able to put players in that sweet spot between the game's like challenge, and the player's like mastery over what they're doing. And if it tips too far in one direction or another, it will stop being fun for the player. And that's
Mhm.
kind of is the balancing act that we need to think about, or that we do think about with Shroom and Gloom, is like it shouldn't be too easy to just create an infinite combo, and you now just have like one or two of the right cards and you automatically just have this infinite. But it should be possible for the player to have these insane crazy things if they play with skill, if they've gotten the experience to know like, oh hey, if I keep eating these sandwiches and I have this thing and I have a pig, they're all gonna like do their little thing together, and then you feel like you've broken the game, or you have broken the game. That's what we want, right?
Mm.
So it's not like we're trying to design something like Magic the Gathering or chess or something where you need to have this perfectly balanced experience between two players, because it's just the player versus the game. We are very happy to basically allow stuff to kind of be like crazy broken if the player has earned it. That's the
Mhm.
qualifier. Yeah.
Mhm. I love the idea of fun as a proxy for balance in this context. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like that's a really good stress
It makes
test.
sense, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%, and it sounds like it's
Yeah.
very iterative. It's like, well, why don't we try to put this in, and then we'll just
Hmm.
play it, and see how it
Yeah.
goes.
100%. Yeah, I guess that's the other big part of the equation, is that like from as early on as possible, we've made a point out of getting people playing Shroom and Gloom so that we can get that kind of feedback, and we can figure out like, oh hey, people are like completely abusing like this feature, or like this campsite structure that lets you reduce the cost of a card to 0, and now they're able to just keep drawing a card and playing it forever, and we're like, okay, cool, we need to fix that now. There's a card in the game called Scythe, which has just had like the craziest journey of like, it was in the old jam version of the game, it was everyone's favorite, and then we brought it back in the new game but made it cost 2, and like no one liked it, and then we were like, oh,
Mm.
we're going to add that it applies vulnerable, and everyone started liking it. Then it got to the point of people being like, you can't beat the game if you don't have the scythe. So we were like, okay, make it insanely hard for people to get the scythe now. But it's just been interesting seeing that like evolution of like a very simple foundational kind of idea kind of having this life breathed into it through that interaction between us and the player base. And I think that's also like very much a foundational thing for Team Lazerbeam, is that feeling of like being in conversation with a player, and it
Mm.
not just being this thing of like, oh, well, we've made this thing now and we're putting it out there for you. It's like we're kind of getting the ball rolling here, but what we want is this kind of backwards and forwards between us and the people playing our games, and that's what inspires us. That's what we want to work towards, is like creating the shared artwork between us, where
Mm.
it's not just like Team Laserbeam making this thing and people consuming it, but rather that they're kind of like inspiring us in turn and like getting us stoked, and that we're creating games that give people opportunities as well to kind of like perform and embody this experience. So yeah, that's a huge part of it, is actually seeing what
Mm.
people do with the stuff that we make once we put it in their hands, rather than us just being like, okay, here's the perfect game, have fun.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really cool. How do you go about setting up those playtests? Because I think it was kind of recent when you posted on, well, maybe not. It was a few months ago when you posted on TikTok that you were moving into your first office, which was really cool. Do you host like in-person live playtests with the community?
Yeah, so we have a good couple different things that we do. In-person stuff, yeah, we have a really tight, cool little community here in Cape Town, and we get together once a month. And so we'll often do playtest sessions with the community there. A
Mhm.
game like Shroom and Gloom is hard to test in that kind of setting because the like runs are quite long.
Mhm.
Um, and so like often it'll be like, cool, we set up for a playtest session and like one person gets to play, but that's still really valuable and really cool. And what you do get in that kind of setting is also just a lot of like first impressions from people being like, ooh, like, like just a more surface level observations and stuff, which is cool. And that it's other game developers is also like, you get a specific kind of feedback, which is great. We also work out of, our friends have this company called Free Lives. They're pretty much South Africa's, like, I think, I would imagine the biggest like game dev studio in probably in Africa, biggest in terms of like game sales and stuff. I could be wrong here, but anyway, they make really good games, and they're really good people, and they're really smart, and they're really good at making games. So we'll often just like on a Friday afternoon, like run into like their kind of common area and put Shroom and Gloom on the TV and just try like steal people to come play Shroom and Gloom with us,
That's cool.
which is really fun. Even within the band, because we have different approaches with how we play and stuff, we'll often also just like do a session of like, okay, cool, this Friday we're going to just hang out and play the game together, and I'll play completely differently to how Katie will play, to how Crystal will play. Everyone has their own different approaches and cards that they favor, or different logic that they have, which is super interesting. But by far the biggest thing is actually just putting stuff out there online. And that was literally just, putting stuff out on itch, getting feedback from people that way, like meticulously watching like streams, if people play stuff and stream it, being able to sit and watch them play. That's again always been a really big thing for Team Lazerbeam, and it's now really hard to do because the playthrough sessions are so long, and
Mm.
quite a lot of people are making videos of them playing the game. But like, when we were making 5-minute games, I would be like, I will watch every single let's play. Like, if anyone makes a video about one of our games, I'm going to watch it. I can't really do that anymore, but it's still super, super, super useful to be able to like see someone playing the game with no awareness that like, hey, the developer is going
Mm.
to be sitting watching me making these decisions. And then Steam's also been really useful, Steam reviews, like discussions on Steam. And then internally, we also have a beta group, and we give them early versions of the game that they get to play before anyone else sees it. And we've just got some wonderful, wonderful people in there that are like very, very detail oriented or very creative with the weird stuff that they'll do that like none of us thought like, oh, hey, someone's going to try to do this. And they'll do weird things like challenge themselves and just be like, okay, cool, I'm not taking the practice dummy. I need to beat the game without
Oh.
upgrading any of my cards. Or I want to have the biggest deck I possibly can, or the smallest deck I can. Just really interesting stuff like that, that just really is like so inspiring to us. So yeah, we've got quite a couple different sort of outlets for getting people testing stuff.
Damn. I always take the practice dummy. That would not work for me.
Yeah, that's a must, right? Well, but it's not a
um,
must. That's the thing. It's totally not a must, I
I
should
was
say.
gonna say, yeah, yeah, because you're building something such that you can get a diversity of play styles coming in and still being able to win. So I guess that's again going back to like fun as a proxy for balance. I really like
Totally,
that. And
totally,
player
totally.
agency as well, it
Yeah,
sounds like,
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
is
Yeah,
really
and a sense
cool.
of kind of, yeah, creativity or personality, that you're not boxed into needing to play the game a certain way. And it's super interesting to see how players take that, because
Mm.
we do see comments from people being like, I have to have the scythe, or I have to have the practice dummy. If I don't get this card, I just like start over. And I totally understand where they're coming from, but it's like dead wrong. It's like you can totally, there's all these different ways to, for people that are unfamiliar with the game, the eating thing becomes like a whole synergistic build that you can build just around like being a foodie, basically. Or something else that we have in our game is persistent growth on all of your attack cards, where a lot of other games in the genre will sort of say, oh, you can upgrade something once or twice. They're quite limiting about like when you get opportunities to upgrade cards and how much a card can be upgraded. And with us, we're just like keep stacking that damage on, add more attacks, add new rules, like, keep modifying and changing these cards in a totally ridiculous way. So that's a way that you can like land up winning the game. And in the current version of the demo, secretly, this is something that's going to leave the demo soon, so enjoy it while you can. But you can harness your emotions, and emotions are temporary cards,
Mm,
and certain actions that you have will elicit emotions, and then there'll be like cards that are in your hand temporarily, but you kind of move through those emotions. And it's kind of like the counterpoint to the growth style, where you're building these big persistent cards with emotions. You're generating emotions within each encounter. So like, you have these three really distinct ways of playing the game, but they all also synergize with each other.
mhm.
And so it very much is a thing where intentionally, you can have all these different ways of playing and really just like roll with whatever kind of gets thrown at you. Hopefully we'll be able to do a better job as well of like making that more clear to players, or incentivizing ways for players to do things with the meta progression and
Mm,
stuff like that, stuff that's not in the demo.
mhm. I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see the next iteration and when it comes out. But I want to talk about something that you mentioned earlier, which is you go off of vibe and whether it feels right. And I know people that have this game dev philosophy that one of the most important things in a game is for the player to enjoy the world that they're in. And so
Mm.
much of what creates that is the art style. You also make art for the game. So I would love to dig into what that experience has been like because again, you have shared videos of the hundreds and thousands of layers of art that you have in the game and it creates this really really cool effect and experience as you're going through the world and it's really colorful. So tell us a little bit about what putting together the art has been like and implementing it in Engine because I can just imagine that like things shift sometimes and you got to put it back and you encounter bugs obviously when you have like that many assets in a scene. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the experience of actually coming up with the art style and then beginning to implement something that's
Mm,
as asset heavy as it maybe seems from the
mm,
outside looking in.
mm, mm. Cool. Yeah, what a cool question. Yeah, so it's interesting for me hearing like your perspective of seeing it like from the outside, because like from the inside, it's very much something that's like did develop quite organically, and also stemmed from us being in a short jam and quickly needing
Mm,
to figure out like some the like the visual aspect of the game, and like you say, delivering on that vibe. Um, while still trying to build out an entire card game in like 7 days. And so really what we found was something that was actually quite economical for us, like quite a
mm.
quick, fast way of being able to do stuff. And have you seen any stuff of the old Jam game? You seen any footage
No,
of that? I
no.
should send you some stuff. It's like very funny to see, because it's like it looks like Shroom and Gloom, but it also totally doesn't look like Shroom and Gloom. And it's just like way more of that like haphazardy, loosey goosey, old school Team Lazerbeam vibe. Um, the line widths between stuff are all over the place, and I thought it was very charming and cool. But it's also like very punk, and it was just a quick economical way of us being able to like quickly create these environments, quickly create enemies, um, to quickly just fill you in on or the viewers in on kind of how this works. All of the sprites in our game are, or everything in our game is drawn by hand.
Mhm.
Everything you see is hand illustrated,
So cool.
aside from bits of typography and stuff like that. But the every enemy, every card, every environmental detail, lots of the UI, the overlays, all like, hand stuff and a lot of frame for frame animation as well. But that stuff is only drawn in black and white with one layer of like gray shading. And
Okay.
then we color the elements programmatically inside the engine based on a gradient that will draw out for each of the levels. So each tunnel will kind
Mm.
of, let's say, flow from green into blue into purple. And so depending on where a particular asset lies within the tunnel, it'll be colored based on that. And then there's like some other rules for things like the cards themselves have their own rules for what they should look like and stuff. So it's actually the foundation of it is this like very economical way of trying to make a game. Although I understand people looking at a level now and being like, what the hell, this is insane. Like, why are you doing this to yourselves? Like, we've really gotten comments from people being like, I feel sorry for the artist. It's like, don't feel sorry for us. We're loving this. Like, I'm having the time of my life here. But it's just funny seeing from the outside people's kind of take of like being like, this is, like literally, I think last week we got a comment from someone being like, isn't there an easier way to do this? And it's like, yeah, like, don't make video games. If
That's
you
the
want an
answer to
easy out,
everything in
like
game
don't
development.
don't do art, right? Like if you want to make life easy, don't become an artist. But like it's certainly like a great deal of work and love that goes into stuff. And I think
Hmm.
making that jump between the old Jam version and Shroom and Gloom as it stands now, the actual game, that was one of the biggest turning points. And again, that's like huge high fives to Evan there for being like, I was so enamored by what the old Jam game looked like. I'm like, this is the best looking game I've ever made. Like, this is great. And Evan's like, it looks quite good. And I was like, what do you mean it looks quite good, dude? It looks incredible. And he really pushed me and gave me that kick in the ass to be like, I've been making these like scrappy punk games for 10 years. And he's like, I want to see what it looks like if you challenge yourself, if you don't just
Mm.
stick the first thing that you draw into the game and actually try do some iteration and actually try create some consistency and a sense of feeling like the world is kind of grounded, I guess. The older Team Lazerbeam stuff is like very uh cartoony, and Shroom and Gloom is still a pretty cartoony looking game, but we want that world to feel like something that you really believe in. If you see a
Mm.
wooden door, it should look like it's made out of wood. If you see gooey, slimy mushroom stuff, it should feel like you can stick your hand in there and it'll come out all gooey. And I think that was the big benefit of doing that art test. We also got a friend of ours, Jared
Mm.
Lunton, who's an amazing artist and just like creative genius. So like there's also a lot of Jared's the DNA that he put into the project that's there as well. And also just a sense of like playfulness as well from our side of like which is a lot of Katie Laserbeam's like speciality. She's just like the most fun, playful person, and like her little idols on the enemies of like if you highlight someone, what they'll do, or like her ideas with how you can interact with the world. And there's little mushroomy guys that grow out the walls with little faces on, and then Katie will just like show up, and she's just animated these insane animations of them like retracting as you walk past them and stuff like that. And that's just fun. We're just playing with the world, but like what comes out of it is an experience that feels playful to the player, hopefully as
Mm.
well, which is really rad. So yeah, it's been a process, and it is a lot of work, but it's like a very enjoyable process.
Mm.
The building the levels themselves is like a mix between tools that we've built that will be able to basically like, let's say, draw a dozen different like pieces of rock for the walls,
Mm.
and then feed them into like a tunnel generator, and we'll say, cool, we want the
Mm.
tunnel to follow this kind of a spline. This is what the colors are going to be. These are the assets that we want in there, be able to feed that in, and then it'll populate the spaces with those, which is obviously random. So we'll then just generate that like a bunch of times until we land up on something that we really like. And then Kirsten from Team Lazerbeam basically gets stuck in there, and they start shifting and moving stuff around manually, placing additional props and pieces in like key places. A big challenge is also not having like holes in the world that the player can see
Mm.
through between
Mhm.
layers. So then Kristen will be like, oh cool, I'm sticking a big mushroom here or whatever. And then going in and lighting the spaces as well, because they're also reactive to lights, which is the other
Mhm.
really juicy part of the experience. Is like, if you have a torch, that'll add a bit of golden light here, or like you spoke about getting through those pools, that the hot spring is going
Mhm.
to like radiate this like red light that's going to, even if it's in a bluey purpley corner of the world, you now have this interesting kind of combination between stuff. So yeah, it's quite a process. It's quite a lot of like kind of back and forth. But then once we're happy with something, we basically lock it in, that gets baked, it goes into the game. It means that the build size of the game is kind of huge for this sort of a
Mhm.
game. But what it means is that it's able to load almost instantaneously for players. So as soon as they open a door, this whole world is waiting for them. And that they don't need to sit there and wait for all of these individual pieces
Mm,
to like load in. It's just one big real space.
damn. Sounds like a lot
Yeah.
of work, but also sounds like you're having a lot of fun making it.
It's so
so,
fun. It's
so
so
it
fun.
sounds like a win-win. And clearly, I mean, Devolver Digital was also like, "Hey, this is so rad. Why don't we just sign you?" So congratulations on your publishing deal with
Thanks. Thank
Devolver.
you.
That is so cool. And on
Thanks.
the 100,000 wish list that you have,
Yeah, it's
it's
100
been
125 now.
125. It has
Yeah.
been so cool following so much of the journey of the game because like I have gotten to see so many of these milestones. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit on the marketing side what that's been like because whenever someone starts to post about a project and I don't know whether you did it on a new account or not, but like it takes time to get that traction to where you are now. Like 125,000 wish lists is incredible. So tell us a little bit about how you think about marketing because anytime that I'm on TikTok and I see one of yours, it's like it's very whimsical and you're showing either the game or you're showing the engine or you're showing like your team having fun. Like I don't know. There's this sense of joy I think that I see when I see your content. But yeah, tell us a little
Oh,
bit about kind of your
oh,
content and how you think about marketing.
that's so lovely. That's such a cool take. I mean, that's it entirely, I guess, also what we're like shooting for with this stuff as well. And I think with Team Laserbeam from like our origins, being a band versus, being like a company or a studio or something.
Mm.
One of the things that I love with music bands and I love with rock and roll and stuff is this that it's not locked into the primary medium of what it is, but it's this kind of
Mm.
bigger thing, right? It's like when you find a musician or a band that you really love. I feel like this is a less of a thing in 2025, so this is probably also me like showing my age now. But like when I was a kid and I would find a band that I would fall in love with or whatever, you'd like pour over the album art or the
Yes.
music videos. You just see a
Yes.
photo of a band and just be like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. That's going up on the wall of my bedroom, right?
Yep. Yep. Best thing
It's
was buying
like
CDs. I'll age myself too. Best thing was buying CDs and going through booklets and being like, this is so cool. Like, how
exactly,
did they put this together?
exactly right. And it's so that this whole wider expanded thing. And for me, a lot of the best bands were really, really good at that as well. It's not just that the music was the best, but it's like they
Mm.
looked so cool. Like, this like understanding that there was this visual aspect to being a band, and that part of the magic of the thing and part of like the meta artwork is the band itself is the artwork, right? Like there's each individual song, those form individual albums, but the band is like the real artwork in a way, right? And a huge part of that is the band putting themselves out there, and then people being like, oh hey, this is like my favorite member of this band, like I really love this person or that person, they're so cool, you know we wanted to have that same thing of people geeking out about Jason's music and just being like, oh my gosh, the music in Team Laserbeam. And then, like so we kind of put ourselves into the games as well from the get-go. If you go back and play all of the old games, there's us high-fiving each other up to the point of Shroom and Gloom of like, you start the demo, you see little mushroom versions of us
Yeah.
being like, hi, we're
Yeah.
Team Laserbeam, welcome to our demo.
So wholesome.
Um, which, I think a lot of other game devs would be like, this is really dumb or not
No,
cool or
it's
whatever,
so
but
it's
it's
so wholesome.
it's just our vibe, right? And so we've had an interesting experience with like social media, or like for me personally as well, because I do most of that stuff for Team Laserbeam. And when we started out as a three-piece, that was very much just out of necessity, whereas like Jason hated doing that stuff.
Mm.
Richard had to do a lot of heavy lifting being the only programmer in Team Laserbeam. So out of the three of us, I was like, cool, I got this. I'll set us up a Twitter account, or I'll make a goofy little video. I'm also my background is in like television and
Mm.
animation and stuff. So I have, some chops to make a video or make a poster, made, used to organize gigs and made a lot of posters for a lot of shows. So like making key art for a game or whatever, it's like I can do that. And in the same way, making something to get people excited about what we're doing, making a
Mhm.
poster for one of our games, making a trailer. But that said, because we didn't take Team Lazerbeam seriously, I never really applied myself with that stuff. And at some point, like Richard came over to my house and I started making trailers for other people's games. And I
Mm.
showed him a trailer I was working on, and he was like, "When are you going to do this for us?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's a pretty good question." you know. Um, and if you go and look at the early Team Lazerbeam trailers that they are terrible. They are really, really, really objectively really bad. The one for Snow Cones 2, which was like a 5 minute long game, the trailer basically just says, from the creators of Wrestling with Emotions and Dress to Express Dancing Success comes a game so short we can't show you any more of it. And then that was it. It was like one shot of the game, and it was over in 15 seconds. So like we really, didn't didn't try, if I'm super honest, right? And the same with social media stuff. The stuff that we would post, we were just not thinking about like, is this
Mm.
going to get engagement? Are we going to get views? Are we going to get followers? And so, unsurprisingly, the stuff got no views, no followers, no engagement. But there's a lot of goofy early Team Laserbeam stuff out there. And then our previous game was a game called Wrestling with Emotions 2, sequel to the original Wrestling with Emotions. And that was our first time signing with a publisher. We signed with a new
Mm.
publisher, and they were like, "Cool, you don't need to worry about marketing the game at all. We've got that. You guys just
Mm.
focus on making the game and don't even think about this." So I was like, "Okay, cool, that's great. I'm gonna just work really hard on the game and trust that the publisher is gonna, be getting us the wish lists and stuff like that." And unfortunately, as we were approaching finishing the game, they basically like were going out of business,
Mm.
and we didn't know that. And they kind of came to us being like, "Oh, hey, no one likes Wrestling with Emotions. It's not getting any wish
Mm.
lists." And we were like, "But you said you were going to just market it like, before we were ready to launch it, and we're approaching that time." And they're like, "No, no, no. We're kind of, you know." The impression that we kind of got from them was they were like, "No one cares about this game." So I was just like, "Look, I care about this game. I'm sure there's other people out there that are going to care about this game, and I'm just now frantically myself realizing that we don't no longer really have
Mm.
publisher support. I'm going to try to get people excited about this game," and started
Mm.
posting on TikTok every single day. And at that point tried and failed because I was trying, I think.
Mm. Oh my God, that must have been
um
so stressful.
yeah, it was quite sad. But I mean, it wasn't the worst either. Like, I made these long, yappy videos where I was talking about making the game and talking about like all the things going on in my life, and just like being very indulgent, I guess you could say, was a way of putting it, right? Which like my friends were like, "Oh, this is cool to see," but random strangers were not interested. And then when eventually things like totally blew up with Wrestling with Emotions, and our publisher was like, "Oh, by the way, we're going out of business. You don't have a publisher anymore."
Mm.
Like, um, at that point, I was like, "Okay, cool. Now do I try to salvage this game that like my own confidence in it is shaken? I've been trying to hype it up for like 100 days on TikTok, posting every day, and it's not getting any traction. Do I now continue trying to do that, or do we do Shroom and Gloom?"
Mm.
And I spoke to Evan about it, and he was like, "Yo, let's just try prototype Shroom and Gloom, and let's just see where it lands." And so as we went into that prototyping phase, I completely forgot about the internet or like social media entirely. Just focused on the game solidly for that month of that art test. I made some videos at the start of the art test and then dropped off by the end of the art test. I was just focused on like, make this the best game I possibly can. Like, I don't care about TikTok right now. And then as we were about to drop the prototype, I was like, "Oh crap, I should maybe tell someone that this thing's coming." And filmed my screen, filmed the first 5 seconds of gameplay of Shroom and Gloom, and then like had myself like filling in this little like cool little game dev map of like the process of finishing a game. It took me, no exaggeration, like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes. I think I did like 2 takes. put it out there, and it just got like thousands of views, and like that had never happened for us. I was just like,
Mm.
oh, okay, there's something here, like. And then made a follow-up video that we dropped with the prototype. We didn't have a trailer, or I ended up making a really bad like 15-second trailer. But I did make this video that just like, again, it was literally just me recording my screen,
Mm.
the first minute of gameplay, a little bit of edits to just like speed some stuff up here or there, but for the most part, just 1 minute of raw gameplay, camera pointed at the screen. And that just like blew up beyond anything I'd ever seen before,
Mm.
like hundreds of thousands of views. And that was on my personal account, which my other posts had been doing poorly on there. So it wasn't a new
Mm.
account, it wasn't a fresh account, it was an existing account, which you wouldn't have expected necessarily to perform well, but it was just like the content clearly was resonating with
Mm.
people, or the game was resonating with people.
Mm.
And presenting it in this like low effort kind of way was actually also like hitting the mark. So yeah, it's been an interesting process since then, because it was like that was like this crazy high of like, oh hey, 800,000 people saw this video that we made. But then not really knowing how to follow it up, or not really having
Mm.
any like big reason to follow it up, like not really having it like a goal or objective. And that was on my TikTok, my Ben TikTok. That got like a bunch of followers off of that video. So then I would try posting stuff about the game on the Team Lazerbeam TikTok, which had like 200 followers, and it would just like bomb. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to keep posting on my own account, and sporadically kind of doing stuff and just trying different things, just being playful with it, and like not taking it particularly seriously. But slowly getting interested in that idea of like, what does it actually mean to do this thing, right? Like,
Mm.
as an extended part of the art form, like what is this like? What are we creating, or what are we representing by making all these like tiny videos? And it was just very liberating for me, leaning into that thing of like really not trying, like coming from a background in like broadcast television where like everything
Mhm.
has to be perfect, everything has to be just so the right time, like blah blah blah. And it's like, no, like forget about that completely. Like just be spontaneous and have fun with it, do it in a way that's like manageable to you, because I do want to spend most of my time working on the game, right? I don't want
Mhm.
to spend most of my
Mhm.
time making TikToks. So find easy, cheap wins, and seeing stuff resonating with people was like just kind of motivated me to kind of keep digging into that. And then at some point, a little while ago, I started posting more to the Team Lazerbeam account, and slowly being able to see like, oh, hey, we're building this up. We're connecting with some really cool people. Mostly also other game devs, like, you and I, like, finding each other over TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah.
Found some other just great devs. And it's just also heartening to me to be able to encourage those people or see what they're doing. And that inspires me as well, So it's not just this like draining thing, but it's like actually can be like a very energizing process, like being part of this community of devs that are all online together and sharing what we're doing. And yeah, about like 2 months ago now, just on a Saturday afternoon, made another one of our like, hey, look at what the game looks like in engine videos, and that just like went through the ceiling. And
Yeah.
after that happened, I'm like, I know what to do now. Like I've put in the time to know, like, or to have some sense, I shouldn't say I know, but I have like some feeling of like being able to like continue this thing and take that momentum and just roll with it. And that kind of climaxed last month with us hitting 10 million views between Instagram and TikTok
Mhm.
combined, in a 30-day period. 10 million views within 30 days. So it is, by our standards, going super well. But it's also not like a case of that we're really trying to like sell or push anything on people. We're never like,
Mhm.
oh, wishlist the game, or like follow us, or, you know, we're just kind of like sharing what we're doing because it's fun for us, and it's cool for us to have this documented as well, of being able to like look back on this time spent together making this game. And it's definitely, like I say, it's like interesting for me trying to wrap my head around that thing of like, what engages people, what interests people,
Mhm.
what holds people. Like that's what we're all into in different forms or ways, like not necessarily in a social media sense, but it's like we're making and creating stuff because we want to
Mm.
connect with people. And so these little bite-sized opportunities to try to like refine that and figure it out, and see what works for you personally, because I think that's would be what I would finish with, is it's like it's really just about like sincerity and authenticity. It's like I couldn't do
Mhm.
this in a way that like professional games marketing people would. but they can't do what they do in my way either,
Mm,
right? And so it's like that's the real silver bullet, I think, for me. Even though I'm not necessarily all that good or reliable at being able to do this, I'm finding something that works for me and that's fun for me and is energizing for me, and hopefully also just resonates with people, and
mm.
yeah. So
I
it's been wild.
I love the insight about kind of authenticity and things don't need to be, you know, a $1 million budgeted video because like I grew up in a time of like everything is airbrushed to perfection. Nothing really seems real. And so what's been very refreshing about pockets of social media today is people just being excited about the things that they're making and getting to
Mm,
see like people's authentic reactions to things or
yeah,
when someone's super excited to show what their game looks like in engine or something like that
yeah,
like
yeah,
that hit that those are the things that I really like to
yeah,
follow because I'm like, oh, this is like the
yeah,
real. This is the
yeah, yeah,
real
yeah,
behind
yeah.
the scenes. This isn't
No,
the
and also
like,
when things go wrong, right?
yeah,
Things
yeah,
breaking
totally.
or things
Yep,
falling
yep.
over. Like that's so interesting. Like you can see a glossy, polished game trailer, but like getting to see devs showing you everything on fire behind the scenes, that's way more interesting, right?
And I'm not saying there's no space for like the really, really polished, trailers. There's a space for that, but on social media particularly, like on your account or on a studio's account, like it's really cool seeing the real behind the scenes, the like real,
Yeah.
raw, authentic behind the
Yeah, yeah,
scenes. So
yeah.
I love seeing that kind of stuff. Um,
No, and it is just interesting as well how like, the meta is kind of favoring
mm,
this more spontaneous, low effort stuff.
mhm,
Uh,
mhm,
I mentioned that when we launched the prototype, we just had this like really, really lousy low effort trailer. But when we announced our partnership with Devolver, we dropped our first proper trailer and put good amount of time into that, scripted it, sat capturing footage,
mhm,
like sound design, animated titles, the whole shebang. Um, Posted that on our socials, and that's gotten, will now maybe be like 60,000 views or something. So not nothing, but
mhm,
by comparison, 15 seconds of like in-engine footage has gotten like 7 million views.
mm,
It's like, okay, what's, like, at least for us, obviously it varies from studio to
mhm,
studio, from game to game, but I do feel like the value of pouring insane amounts of like time and money into making a single video that people probably aren't gonna like all that much. It's a sad thing to say,
mm,
but it's like it doesn't have that same spark for people. Like 10, 15 years ago, like a killer game trailer, people be like, "Oh my gosh, you have to see this.
mm,
Have you seen this? Send it to your friends." Like, it's a big deal. Now things don't work like that anymore, right? Like
mm,
people just want small, authentic little sparks of something, and that has the potential to get you way more visibility and traction
mm,
than spending $100,000 making like the best game
mm.
trailer, which is cool for
Yeah,
indies like us, right? It's like
yeah.
it's really cool. It's really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting insight because I don't think that's what we're used to in general, or at least I'm certainly not. Again, I grew up at a time where, it was like the picture perfect everything in media. So again, I think it's cool that now stuff that's just 5, 7 seconds of gameplay can do really, really well. But I think that
Yeah.
goes back to what you said at the beginning of like, we really wanted to nail the vibe, and this is kind of
Mm,
what we went for. And I think the art
mm,
style is so compelling such that people are like,
mm.
oh, this is really cool. I'm going to watch this thing the whole way through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think it also speaks to the craftsmanship of the game. If a short video can do that well,
Yeah.
right? Like I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
art style kind of hooking people in.
Yeah. No, and it
Um,
doesn't it doesn't it doesn't even need to be like, I mean, it in our case certainly that's one of our primary hooks is the look of the game.
hmm.
Um but it just needs to look fun or appealing.
Yes,
That
yeah,
doesn't that
yeah.
doesn't necessarily need to be like visually incredible, but someone needs to be able to like look at the game and be like in a few seconds like, I understand what's going on and I
Mm,
want to go to there. Like that looks like something that I want to
mm,
do. Which is again, it's super interesting, like looping back to what we were saying earlier about that like kind of back and forth with things, or that kind of conversation between the game developers and the player or the audience, um seeing what's landing with people, right?
mm,
Like understanding for me now why wrestling with emotions wasn't able to find its audience,
mm,
or like our previous game was this game Teenage Blob, which was like a half game, half album thing, half music, half songs. I mean, excuse me, half games, half songs.
Yes. Is
No
that a
one,
vinyl?
it's a vinyl, yeah. No one
Yeah.
wanted this thing. No one wanted this game, because they couldn't understand it. It was
Hmm.
just, so it's like I'm just very interested now. Sorry, I need to drink tons of
No,
water.
please, please. I have one final question before we open it up for Q&A.
Cool.
One thread that I feel like I have seen over and over again in our conversation has been following the fun. Like, what is fun? What brings us joy? Follow that, which is
Ooh,
really, really cool. So,
ooh.
I wanted to ask you if you could give your younger self advice, what would it be? Would it be follow the fun? Would it be something else? It's a big
That's such
question,
a
but what comes to
cool
mind?
question. That's such a cool question. So I've had like a weird life, right? And I've done a lot of weird
You've done a
things
lot.
over time. Um, this last 10 years of my life, it's like video games have just been my thing. But for 10 years before that, I didn't make games at all. And it was always something I wanted to do. And I was kind of a bit tortured by it because it was like this dream that I had, but I didn't know how to achieve it.
Mm,
And I was playing in bands, DJing, organizing gigs. I ran a little online record label. I was a blogger. I used to VJ. I made comic books. Um, I was just into all of these different things, and I used to be like really hard on myself, being like, why don't you just pick one thing and be good at that instead of being
mm,
like terrible at a whole bunch of things? Um, and I would be like quite conflicted, being like, oh, I should be trying to do a remix or, make an artwork or like do something creative. And I was like, I just want to sit and play PlayStation. And, then I would land up sitting on the couch playing video games, low-key being mad at myself because I wasn't being like productive or
mm,
whatever. Or when I was being productive, being like, I'm doing the wrong thing, or I'm not like, I'm too scattered and stuff. And when I started making games finally, I was 30 by that point. So I'd been through my whole 20s doing all of these different creative things. And once I started making games, it was just like everything converged. Like
mm,
the writing, art, comic books, music, being in a band, getting people excited about stuff, marketing, promoting things, like all of these different skill sets that I built up with all of these different kind of, pursuits in different kind of countercultural spaces, all sucked into being like, oh hey, this is all feeding directly into me as a game developer. And then the crazy part was being like, oh yeah, and I put in my 10,000 hours playing video games. I'm like
mm,
not a master of making them, but I am a master of like understanding games. I have like absorbed and immersed myself in this medium. All that time I was being so hard on myself of being like, oh, you're being lazy. Like, why are you playing games and not like doing something? It's like, no, I was training. I was putting in the time. I was, like investing that time in this thing that's like my life calling. So my advice to baby Ben would just be like, don't beat yourself up about stuff.
mm,
Follow whatever interests you, follow your curiosity, follow your passion.
mm.
It all ties together. It all works out in the end. Have fun, like so I guess yeah, the fun is a core of the whole thing because it's like if you're having fun, you're doing stuff, you can't go wrong.
I love
Even if it
that.
doesn't necessarily feel like it that, right? It's only in
Mm,
retrospect when you see the big picture where you're like, oh my gosh, it all came together.
mhm. Yeah, I feel very similarly in that, like, at the end of the year, I always do, like, a big brain dump, and I this was maybe 2017, I made this, like, list of questions for myself to just help me reflect on every single year, and, I have been kind of answering those questions for myself for the last almost 10 years, I guess, and it's been so cool looking back and seeing, like, "Oh, this is the stuff that gave me energy because it was fun."
Mm,
Like, how do I keep
mm,
doing that
mm,
thing that
mm.
that gave me some energy and joy, and what was
Yeah,
it? And I
yeah.
really think about that. Or like it's so cool to look even 5 years back and be like, oh, things are
Yeah.
really different. Like,
Yeah.
where am I finding the fun today? Where was I seeking the fun at that time? So
That's
yeah,
really
I love that
cool. That's
insight.
really
I love
cool.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess
Um,
also carving out that space to actually
yes.
reflect on stuff and look
Yeah.
at things
Yeah.
is so important.
Yeah.
Like
Agreed.
people, I mean, in general, I just think we just so rarely have like the time or focus to take that step back and actually be like,
Yeah.
oh hey, let me think about this. That was a big one for me as well with like getting going pro with making games was
Mm.
doing like morning pages and just like brain dumping every morning,
Mm.
just waking up and just being like, just like
Mm-hmm.
writing stuff down, everything that's bothering me, everything that I'm not sure about. Literally just like started seeing my life turning around after I started doing
Mm.
that. It's so important, like not just to have this constant output, but to actually just be able to have those little quiet moments to yourself and reflect
Yes.
on where you're at. And inversely with the like what what was fun or energizing for you, what didn't you enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yep.
what's going on
Yep.
in your life that you don't
Yep.
like, because then cut it out, like make a plan
Yep.
to not have to deal with
Yeah.
this thing and not be like, oh
100%.
hey, I hate doing this, or like this makes me feel like trash or whatever,
Yeah.
um
100%. Two questions
yeah,
that I have on there. One of them is what has been your deepest joy this year? And the
yeah.
second one is what has been your deepest sorrow? And the
Wow.
actions that come out of that are okay, go follow the joy, and then
Yeah.
why did this thing make you so upset? Like how can you reduce the amount of whatever that thing is in your life? So yeah,
That's
I
so
love
good. The big
journaling. I
questions.
love the
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. Yeah. What
But
inspired you
yeah.
to get into that or start that process?
Uh 2017 was just a very pensive year is the only way that I can describe that year. And it's not like anything big was happening. I just found a lot of quiet in that year and I really leaned into the quiet of that year. I had moved to a new city the prior year and so it was like I'm in this new place. I'm gonna like go take long walks and explore the city. And I have a very busy brain. So yeah, I think I'm just a very pensive person in general. um, yeah, but I love it.
That's
I
really
think it's a
cool.
great
That's really,
exercise.
really cool. Yeah.
Um,
Advice for baby Ben as well. Be like, get
mm.
better at writing things down. Or get better at like just stopping for a minute and just like reflecting on what's going on in your life instead of just chasing every shiny thing that catches your
Mm.
eye. Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be an essay and it doesn't need to be a book. Like it
No.
could just be a
No,
few bullet
totally.
points to remind you
Yeah.
of an
Yeah,
experience.
yeah, just take
So
stock
yeah,
of things. Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I think that's also probably one of the things for me that is rad about this, like creating stuff to put stuff out there to people as well. It also makes you question, like, hey, what's important to me? What's going on
Yes.
in my life
Yeah.
that I'm most excited
Yeah.
about? What do I want to share, or what do I want other people to experience? Which is also like quite a cool
Mhm.
little
Mhm.
thing to do.
Yeah, agreed.
Can be a cool thing to do. Yeah,
Yeah, agreed.
yeah,
Ben, shall we open it up for Q&A?
yeah. Let's do it. Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. For everyone watching the recording, thank you so much. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you are watching the VOD, thank you for being here. Our socials will be in the description if you'd like to follow us on social media. And if you have any feedback or topics that you'd like to see covered in the future, let us know. Thank you again. And let's open it up.
Cool.
I release everyone from emote only chat.